Imagine a seemingly ordinary afternoon. The sun is shining outside, but inside a car stopped in the middle of traffic, the atmosphere is completely different. Diva, a 35-year-old woman, is gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles are almost white. Her palms are sweating, and her heart is beating at a frantic pace. She tries to convince herself that it is nothing, just another day, just another stressful moment at work. But deep down, she knows it is more than that. Diva feels a crushing pressure in her chest, as if something invisible is pushing her down, squeezing the air from her lungs. The car horns around her sound like deafening screams. She is trapped in a maze of thoughts that revolve around a single idea. Why can't I control this? What is wrong with me? Anxiety had visited her before. It was like an old enemy, always lurking. But today felt different. It was growing, gaining strength, and she was completely helpless. Looking around, all Diva saw were people going about their lives. Why can they handle this and I can't? This thought hit her with an even stronger force than the tightness in her chest. Tears began to form, but she blinked them away quickly, trying to hold them back. After all, she was strong. She couldn't afford to break down in the middle of the street. But despite all her efforts, the feeling of failure was overwhelming. Diva couldn't ignore that this anxiety was controlling her life. She had lost count of the number of times she had turned down invitations from friends or avoided social events because the mere thought of being in a room full of people made her panic. On one such occasion, a friend invited her to a wedding. It was going to be a small, intimate celebration, and Diva actually wanted to go. She had even bought the dress, tried on shoes, and imagined what it would be like. But on the day of the event, everything fell apart. The anxiety began to grow early in the morning. What if no one wanted to talk to me? What if I said the wrong thing? She convinced herself it would be a disaster, and at the last minute, she texted in sick. Her friend was understanding, but Diva knew this was becoming a pattern. Now, stuck in traffic and completely alone with her thoughts, Diva began to wonder if this would ever stop. And more importantly, if she could figure out how. It was at that moment that something peculiar happened. It wasn't a cry, an enlightenment, or a miracle. It was simply a question that popped into her mind. Is there anything I haven't tried yet? It was a simple question, but it was enough to break the cycle of negative thoughts for a moment. Diva began to recall the countless things she had tried to deal with her anxiety. Therapy, meditation, even medication for a short period of time. Nothing seemed to solve the problem permanently. Each method worked for a while, but the anxiety always found a way to return, stronger and more insidious. As she reflected, a new idea began to emerge. Maybe the problem wasn't just about what she was trying, but how she was trying it. What if there was something so basic and accessible that she had simply ignored? Something that didn't require major investments or radical changes in her life. Diva wasn't sure what it was, but that small spark of curiosity was enough to rekindle her hope. And here's the question. Have you, who are watching this video, ever felt like Diva? Have you ever felt like anxiety is always one step ahead, controlling you, holding you back, sabotaging you? Maybe you, like her, have tried everything. And maybe you've also asked yourself, what haven't I tried yet? If this question resonated with you, know that you are not alone. Diva's story is just the beginning of something that can change your life. What she discovered was not a miraculous technique or a magic solution. It was something so simple, yet so powerful, that many people forget. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about today. A trick, or rather, a mental shortcut that can transform how you deal with overwhelming anxiety. But before we dive into that, I want you to do something. Take a deep breath, close your eyes for a moment, and ask yourself, what's stopping me from living the life I want? This question may seem difficult, but the answer may be closer than you think. Now get ready, because what you're about to discover today isn't just a trick for anxiety. It's a key to unlocking a new way of thinking and living. Are you ready? Diva wasn't an extraordinary person in the eyes of the world. She wasn't a celebrity, an elite athlete, or someone with an impressive resume. Diva was just an ordinary woman, like so many other people you meet every day, someone trying to balance her work life, her responsibilities at home, her friends, and her own dreams. But inside her there was a battle that no one could see, a constant fight against something invisible, but incredibly real, anxiety. And what made it worse was the silence. Diva was ashamed to admit that she felt this way. When she talked to friends and heard stories about their daily challenges, she felt like what she was facing wasn't legitimate. She thought, everyone goes through problems, so why does mine seem so much worse? You may know this feeling. Anxiety isn't like an illness with visible signs, like a fever or a broken arm. It's something that eats away at you from the inside, often in silence. And in Diva's case, that silence began to feel deafening. She felt isolated, even when she was surrounded by people who loved her. This is the connection between Diva's story and so many others. Anxiety doesn't discriminate. It comes in many forms, affecting young students facing the pressure of exams, mothers trying to balance the responsibilities of raising children and maintaining their careers, and even successful professionals who, to the world, seem to have it all together. The audience listening to Diva's story may recognize these moments in their own lives. They, too, have wondered why they can't turn off their minds before going to sleep, or why a simple get-together with friends can seem like an impossible task. Anxiety is an uninvited guest that for many seems impossible to banish. Diva was just like these people. She kept going because that's what was expected of her, but deep down she felt stuck. It was like running on a treadmill, using up all her energy but not moving forward. And that was the most frustrating part. Diva wasn't someone who would settle easily. She was the type to seek solutions. When she began to realize that her anxiety was becoming more than a passing annoyance, she took action. She did what many do. She searched the internet, read articles, and watched videos that promised miracle cures. For a moment, she even thought she was on the right track. She tried meditation because people said it helped. At first, it seemed promising. She would sit down at the same time every day, take deep breaths and try to focus. But every time she closed her eyes, her mind would fill with thoughts. Am I doing this wrong? Why can't I find peace? After a few weeks, she gave up. She also tried therapy, which helped at times, but the anxiety persisted. It was like a shadow that followed her, even when everything seemed to be going well. And when friends suggested medication, Diva hesitated. Not because he was against it, but because he wanted to find a solution that depended on his own strengths. But the more she tried, the more she seemed to be failing. At one point, she started to avoid talking about it. She felt like no one really understood what she was going through. Even those who tried to help with the best advice couldn't get to the heart of the problem. But here's the important part. Diva's story isn't just about the problem. It's about the moment she realized she wasn't alone, that just like her, thousands of people struggle with anxiety every day, and that maybe what she was looking for wasn't a magic solution, but something simple and practical that she could integrate into her life. This is where connecting with the audience comes in. If you're listening to this right now, you've probably tried a lot of things too. Maybe you've heard about tricks for managing anxiety, but somehow nothing seems to really work. You feel stuck in this cycle like Diva was. This story isn't just about sharing what Diva discovered. It's about recognizing that anxiety is a silent enemy that affects us all in different ways. It's about giving voice to these experiences that are often hidden because we're afraid of appearing weak or not being understood. Diva represents a shared reality, and when you understand that you're not alone in this struggle, the feeling of isolation begins to fade. Because the truth is, anxiety doesn't define who you are. It's just a part of your journey, a part that can be faced one step at a time. And now, I want you to ask yourself, what is your story? When did you realize that you needed to do something about your anxiety? Maybe, like Diver, you are in the midst of your own battle right now, and maybe as you listen to this story, you will realize that there are more possibilities than you ever imagined. Diva's journey with anxiety was not a straight line, but rather a road full of curves, detours, and dead ends. She knew something was wrong. Anxiety was sapping her energy, robbing her of peace, and interfering with her ability to enjoy life. But the real crisis, the turning point, came at an unexpected moment. It all started on an ordinary day at work. Diver had spent weeks preparing for an important presentation. She knew this was the opportunity she had been waiting for, to showcase her skills, impress her bosses, and perhaps get the promotion she had been longing for. She reviewed the slides dozens of times, rehearsed every word, and even practiced in front of the mirror. But on the day of the presentation, the anxiety decided to show up in full force. In the conference room, as her colleagues settled in, Diver began to feel the first signs. Her heart raced, her palms grew clammy. She could feel the heat rising up her neck, and her mind was so overwhelmed that it was as if all the words she had memorized had disappeared. This was her moment, but instead of confidence, all she felt was fear, an overwhelming fear. She tried to begin. "Good morning, everyone." The words came out, but her voice was shaky. As she projected the first few slides, panic rose within her. Her mind repeated a cruel mantra: "You will fail. Everyone can see that you are nervous. They will laugh at you later." Each thought was like a stone, sinking her deeper and deeper into an ocean of insecurity. And then it happened. As she was talking about an important fact, Diver lost it. A pause too long. The room fell silent, and to her it seemed that all eyes were filled with judgment. She tried to improvise, but her words made no sense. Finally, she looked at the colleague next to her and asked, "Can you continue for me? I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well." It was the surrender she never wanted to make, but at that moment it seemed like the only way out. Diver left the room with a heavy heart and tears threatening to fall. In the bathroom, away from everyone's eyes, she finally let it all out. Tears of frustration, shame, and despair. Why is this happening to me? I've prepared so much. Why can't I just be normal? These thoughts swirled in her mind as she tried to compose herself. This experience was a turning point for Diver. Up until that moment, she had believed that anxiety was something she could deal with on her own, something she could overcome with willpower. But after that day, it became clear that this was not true. Anxiety was not just a nuisance. It was a real enemy, one that was beginning to steal not only her peace, but also her opportunities for personal and professional growth. If you're watching this video, you may know this feeling well. Maybe you've had a moment when you felt like anxiety had gotten the better of you. Maybe you've lost something important, an opportunity, a friendship, or even your self-confidence. These moments are devastating, and it's easy to feel like there's no way out. Diva felt the same way. For weeks after the presentation, she avoided social interactions at work, feeling small and insignificant. She began to doubt herself in every aspect of her life. If I can't handle something so simple, how will I face the bigger challenges that lie ahead? This doubt crept into every corner of her mind. The biggest struggle in Diva's journey wasn't just the anxiety itself, but what it represented. For her, anxiety was a constant reminder that she wasn't in control. And for someone like Diva, someone who has always prided herself on her strength and independence, that was unbearable. But here's the truth that Diva learned and that I want to share with you. These moments of conflict, as painful as they may be, are also the moments that force us to grow. It's in these moments that we are forced to stop and ask ourselves, why is this happening, and what can I do to change? What Diva discovered after this experience was that she had been trying to fight anxiety the wrong way. She had seen anxiety as an enemy that needed to be defeated, when in fact anxiety was a messenger. It was trying to alert her to something deeper, something that Diva had been ignoring. If you've ever had a moment like Diva's, a moment when you felt like everything was falling apart, know that it's not the end of your story. It's just the beginning of something new, because it's from these struggles that we learn the most important lessons. And in Diva's case, it was at this point that she began to realize that there was a trick, a simple secret that could change everything. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Because what Diva discovered not only changed her life, but it could change yours too. Are you ready to find out what it is? After her presentation breakdown at work, Diva felt like she had hit rock bottom. She didn't know exactly what to do, but one thing was certain: she couldn't go on like this. It was as if she was in a constant battle with herself, and each day was a struggle to keep her head above water. It was in a moment of total exhaustion, during a quiet night in her living room, that something unexpected happened. Diva was surfing the internet looking for answers, as she always did when she felt like she had no way out. Alternative therapies, motivational videos, articles about anxiety. She had tried them all before, but this time, something different caught her attention. It was a simple article with a title that seemed almost banal: The Technique That Can Transform How You Deal with Anxiety. Diva hesitated before clicking, thinking that it was probably just another one of those magic formulas that promised to solve everything in a few minutes, but that deep down were just illusions. Still, something made her click. The text began by describing something that seemed too straightforward to be true. The trick was not to fight anxiety, but to accept it, not passively, but actively, as part of the process of self-discovery. The idea was simple but radical. Instead of trying to eliminate the symptoms, you learn to reconnect with yourself through small steps. Diva read each word carefully, and for the first time, she felt that something made sense. The trick was not something complex, expensive, or inaccessible. It was so simple that she almost laughed at herself for never having thought of it before. Consciously breathing and grounding yourself in the present moment. The article explained that in moments of anxiety, the mind goes into a fight-or-flight cycle, and the body responds as if it were facing real danger. But by controlling your breathing and bringing your attention to the present, you can break that cycle. It seemed like a no-brainer, but Diva realized she had never actually tried it. Sure, she had heard of taking deep breaths to calm herself, but she had never understood the real impact of it. The difference was in how you did it, by focusing entirely on the sensation of each inhale and exhale, allowing your body to take over and slowly slow down the chaos of your mind. Diva was skeptical, but at the same time curious. That night, she decided to give it a try. She sat on the couch, closed her eyes, and began to breathe slowly and deeply. For the first few seconds, she felt a little uncomfortable. Her mind was full of thoughts and worries, but as she continued, something began to change. She began to notice sensations she had never noticed before: the sound of the air moving in and out of her lungs, the feel of the couch beneath her legs, the rhythm of her heart slowly slowing down. It was as if time had stopped. For a few minutes, Diva was not worried about the future, nor was she beating herself up about the past. She was just there, present with herself. When she opened her eyes, she felt something she hadn't felt in months: a sense of peace. Over the next few days, Diva began to apply this technique to moments of anxiety. Whenever she felt her heart racing or her mind spiraling, she would stop for a few minutes to breathe consciously. At first, it wasn't easy. There were days when it didn't seem to work, and she wondered if she was fooling herself. But over time, she began to notice something incredible. The anxiety still appeared, but it no longer had the same power over her. Diva also began to realize that by paying attention to her breathing, she was creating a space to understand her emotions. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by them, she began to observe them as if they were temporary visitors. This small shift in perspective made all the difference. It was then that she had a moment of clarity. Anxiety was not her enemy. It was a messenger trying to tell her something important. And by learning to listen to this message without judgment, Diva began to transform her relationship with anxiety. Instead of fighting it, she learned to dance with it. This simple but powerful discovery changed Diva's life. It wasn't a miracle cure, but a process of reconnecting with herself. She realized that the trick wasn't something you did once and forgot about. It was a habit, a daily practice that over time helped her regain control of her life. And now, I ask you, have you ever tried stopping and listening to what your anxiety is trying to tell you? Have you tried giving yourself the gift of a moment of mindful breathing, without rushing, without guilt? If not, maybe it's time to discover how something so simple can be transformative. In the next few minutes, we'll explore in more depth how this trick can be applied to your life and how it can bring results that, like Diva, you never imagined possible. Diva's transformation didn't happen overnight, but each small step brought a noticeable change. After discovering and starting to apply the conscious breathing trick, she noticed something that seemed almost magical. The anxiety was still there, but its power had diminished considerably. It was as if the monster that had previously terrified her had become a whisper that she could understand. In the first week, Diva began using conscious breathing whenever she felt the first signs of anxiety. At work, when she noticed her heart racing before a meeting, she would take a quick break in the bathroom, close her eyes, and take a deep breath. She would inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for another 4, and exhale slowly for another 4. At first, it felt strange and even a little forced, but surprisingly, it worked. The frantic pace of her thoughts began to slow down, and she was able to focus on the present moment. Little by little, Diva began to notice that she could handle situations that had previously been unthinkable. She was not only participating in meetings, but also contributing more actively. During one such meeting, when a colleague asked her opinion on a project, Diva felt that old fear rise up. But instead of giving in to anxiety, she took a deep breath and calmly responded. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step forward. When she finished, she realized that her colleagues were listening attentively, and that she was, in fact, capable of handling these situations. The transformation didn't stop at work. In her personal life, Diva began to say yes to things that she had previously avoided out of fear. A friend invited her to a social event, and instead of making an excuse not to go, Diva decided to give it a try. She knew she would feel anxious, but now she had a tool to deal with it. And when she got to the event, that's exactly what happened. Her palms were sweaty, her heart was racing. But instead of running away, she paused, took a deep breath, and focused on what she could control in that moment. What was most surprising was what happened next. As she allowed herself to face her fears, Diva began to realize something incredible. Her anxiety wasn't as powerful as it seemed. It was still there, but when she faced it head-on, Diva realized she had more control over the situation than she had imagined. At the event, she not only had fun, but she also made connections with new people, something she hadn't done in a long time. Over time, mindful breathing became a habit for Diva, but this initial practice opened doors to something even greater: self-awareness. She began to notice patterns in her anxiety. For example, she noticed that she always felt more anxious when she took on responsibilities that weren't hers, trying to please everyone around her. She also realized that she had a tendency to criticize herself too harshly, which fueled her fears. These insights led her to make important decisions. Diva began to establish healthy boundaries, both at work and in her personal life. At work, she learned to say no when she received demands that were beyond her capabilities. In her personal life, she began to prioritize activities that brought her joy and peace, such as long walks in the park and reading. One of the biggest changes came when Diva had to present another project at work. It was a big challenge, and the fear tried to return, but this time she was prepared. In the days leading up to the presentation, Diva practiced her conscious breathing and visualized herself facing the situation calmly. On the day of the presentation, she felt anxious, but instead of giving in, she used her technique. When she began to speak, she realized that her voice was steady and that the words flowed naturally. At the end, she was applauded by her colleagues and even received praise from her boss. This victory was a milestone for Diva. She realized that the transformation was not just about controlling anxiety, but about reclaiming her life. What had previously seemed impossible was now achievable. She knew she would still have challenges and difficult moments, but now she was confident that she could face them. Diva's transformation wasn't just internal. It began to impact those around her too. Her friends noticed how open and confident she was, and even asked her for advice on how to deal with their own anxieties. At work, her colleagues began to see her as a natural leader, someone who faced challenges with courage and authenticity. What about you? Have you ever wondered what it would be like to feel in control of your anxiety instead of being controlled by it? Diva's story shows us that you don't have to eliminate anxiety to live better. Sometimes, all it takes is a little trick, a shift in perspective that allows us to take action, even in the midst of fear. In the next few minutes, we'll explore how you can apply this same technique to your life, so that, like Diva, you too can begin your own transformation. Diva's story is inspiring because it reflects the reality of so many people who live with anxiety on a daily basis. Perhaps as you watch this video, you noticed how similar her experiences are to your own. The sweaty palms, the racing heart, the feeling of being crushed by an invisible weight. These moments are not unique to Diva, but a part of the human experience shared by millions of people around the world. Now I want you to stop for a moment and think, what has anxiety been stealing from you? Has it ever stopped you from enjoying special moments, pursuing opportunities, or living life to the fullest? Maybe like Diva, you've passed up a chance at work or avoided a social event because you were afraid of what might happen. Maybe you've even convinced yourself that it's better this way, when in reality, you know that you're letting anxiety take over your life. The big lesson from Diva's story is not that her anxiety magically disappeared or that she found an instant solution to all her problems. Rather, what changed was the way she chose to deal with her anxiety. She stopped treating it as an enemy that needed to be defeated and started seeing it as part of the process. She understood that anxiety was a signal that something needed attention, and by using the technique of conscious breathing, she was able to create space to understand her emotions instead of being dominated by them. And here's the important thing. If Diva could do it, you can too. It doesn't matter how long you've struggled with anxiety or how many times you've tried and failed. The fact that you're here, watching this video, means you're seeking change. And that's a powerful step in itself. You might be thinking, but my anxiety is so much worse than Diva's. My situation is different. And you're right. Everyone is unique, and the way anxiety manifests itself can vary. But what Diva's story teaches us is that even in the face of differences, we can all start with something simple. Sometimes it's the smallest step that leads to the biggest changes. Let's do a little exercise right now. Close your eyes, if you can, and take a deep breath. Inhale slowly, counting to 4. Hold it for another 4 seconds, and then exhale slowly while counting to 4 again. Repeat this a few times. As you do this, pay attention to the sensation of the air moving in and out of your lungs, the sound of your breathing, and the rhythm of your heart. For a few moments, let the world around you fade away and focus solely on this simple act. Now, ask yourself, what is stopping me from living the life I want? It may be hard to answer this question right away, but it's a starting point. It's like opening a door that you've been avoiding for fear of what you might find on the other side. But when you do, you discover that what's on the other side may not be as scary as it seems. Diva was afraid at first too. She hesitated, doubted herself, and even questioned whether she was on the right path. But what kept her moving forward was her determination to not let anxiety define her life. And by taking small steps, she began to see significant changes. She realized that she didn't have to be perfect or have all the answers right away. All she needed was the willingness to start. And now, it's your turn. What can you do today, right now, to start transforming your relationship with anxiety? It could be as simple as practicing mindful breathing, like Diva did. Or maybe it's taking a moment to reflect, writing your thoughts in a journal, or sharing your experiences with someone you trust. Whatever the step, remember, it doesn't have to be big. What matters is that it moves you in the right direction. Finally, I want you to know that you are not alone on this journey. Anxiety can be overwhelming, but it doesn't define who you are. You are stronger than you think, and there are resources, techniques, and people ready to support you. Just like Diva, you have the power to transform your life, one small step at a time. If this video resonated with you, share in the comments how anxiety has impacted your life and what you would like to change. Remember, sharing your story is not a sign of weakness, but of courage. And if you want to continue learning ways to overcome anxiety and live with more balance, subscribe to the channel. This is just the beginning of a journey that can transform not only your relationship with anxiety, but your life as a whole. In the next few minutes, I will share more about how to apply this technique in your daily life and how it can bring even greater results. Are you ready to continue? Let's go together. Now that you know Diva's story and how she transformed her relationship with anxiety, it is your turn. This is not just a time to reflect, but to act. Because the transformation you saw happen to Diva was not the result of luck or unique circumstances. It was the result of a conscious choice, a small step towards something greater. And today, I want to invite you to take that first step on your own journey. Think about everything you've faced so far. How many times have you felt like anxiety was taking over your life, taking away your peace, your energy, and maybe even your self-confidence? How many times have you avoided situations because the fear seemed bigger than you? And most importantly, how many times have you deeply wanted to find a solution, but felt lost amidst so many options that didn't seem to work? If you've made it this far, watching this video, it means there's a part of you that believes in the possibility of change. And that part is what matters, because anxiety, as challenging as it may be, is not a final destination. It's just a chapter in your story. And just like Diva, you have the power to rewrite the course of your life. So, here's the challenge. What are you going to do now? I want you to start small, just like Diva did. You don't have to change your entire routine at once or adopt complicated methods. Start with something simple but powerful. The technique Diva used, mindful breathing, may seem basic, but when practiced consistently, it can be transformative. And the best part, you can start right now. Here's how you can apply it today. Pick a time in your day when you typically feel anxious or overwhelmed. It could be before a meeting, while you're commuting, or even before bed. At that moment, stop for a minute and do the following. 1. Inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4. Hold the breath in your lungs for another 4 seconds. Exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 4 again. Repeat this cycle a few times, focusing only on the rhythm of your breathing. Sounds simple, right? But the impact it can have on your mind and body is incredible. This practice will not only calm your anxiety in the moment, but it will also begin to reprogram how your brain responds to stress over time. And best of all, it's something you can do anytime, anywhere. And I want you to take it a step further. Don't keep this technique to yourself. Share it with someone you know who is also struggling with anxiety. It could be a friend, a colleague, or even a family member. Oftentimes, people around us are fighting silent battles, and something as simple as a breathing technique could be just what they need to start changing. And here's the next step. Subscribe to this channel. This video is just the beginning of a series of content that can help you better manage anxiety and live a more balanced life. Each technique, insight, and story we share here is designed to give you practical and accessible tools. So if you want to continue this journey of transformation, click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. I also want to invite you to share your story in the comments. How has anxiety impacted your life? What have you done to cope with it? And how did this video help you see a new perspective? Your story can not only help you process what you're feeling, but also inspire others who are going through the same thing. Lastly, if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video. Sometimes a simple message can be the catalyst for a big change. And by sharing, you're not only helping that person, but you're also helping to create a community of support and encouragement. So to recap, today I challenge you to do 3 things. First, practice mindful breathing at least once. Second, subscribe to the channel to continue receiving content that can transform your life. And third, share this video or your story with someone who needs it. Anxiety can be challenging, but you don't have to face it alone. This channel, these stories, and these techniques are here to support you every step of the way. Just as Diva found a new way to deal with her fears, you can too. Transformation is within your reach. All you need to do is take the first step. In the next videos, we will explore even more techniques and strategies for dealing with anxiety and other emotional issues. So stay tuned, because this is just the beginning of your journey towards a lighter and more fulfilled life. Are you ready to get started? Take a deep breath. Let's go together.